Hi everyone, my name is Renee Huang. I'm the founder of Wild Women Tribe and the host of Ignite Podcast, where we are uniting women doing inspirational things in the community on topics that matter. Today we will be talking about the art of self-care. So we're moving into the holiday season and things are getting even more busy and hectic than usual, and it's a really good time to remind ourselves to recenter and think of what's important and look after ourselves. So I'm excited to introduce to you two of my guests, Melissa Hite, who is a sexual health consultant and educator, and Kelly Pfaff, who is the owner of the Prospect Executive Suites co-working space up here in Park City.
Yes.
So welcome, ladies.
Thank you.
Part of the fun for me is introducing two women who I know don't know each other, but who have so much in common, because I think we as people really do, and allowing kind of the organic conversation to flow. So I'm really excited to have you both here to talk about that whole idea of self-care, because it is kind of an art, and it's something that takes intention and takes attention. So I wanted to start there and maybe go through what your perception is of self-care. Do you want to start, Melissa?
Sure.
What that means to you?
Yeah, I see self-care and self-love as an action. An action for, of course, caring for oneself. And when we view it as an action rather than a feeling, we automatically assume accountability and responsibility for ourselves. Yeah.
Because it's not just happening to you. It's like something that takes your deliberate attention.
Attention, like you said, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. What about you, Kelly?
Well, it's funny. I mean, self-care, self-love, I mean, are they all the same? I think they are. But like when I think of self-care, it's like taking care of there's that physical piece of yourself, of making sure that your body, your mind, right? But then there's that piece of self-care where it's like what we were saying earlier before the podcast started, is like that ability to say no and set boundaries for yourself. Or maybe you decide to take a stance on something that's going to protect your well-being. I feel like that can come in different shapes and forms like that, not just about the physical and the mind.
I feel like our world is kind of moving into this realm where self-care is really encouraged and talked about. And growing up, I don't really remember having exposure to that. Like, life just kind of happened, and I feel like family dynamics and relationships were kind of, for me, they were just places to air out and act out in a way, and I feel like a lot of my relationships then were like that as well, very unintentional and just kind of full of drama and getting hurt and making up. And for me, this whole idea is really kind of innovative, because I feel like, oh, we don't have to be treating each other in a way that doesn't feel good,
Right.
And, this whole idea of like spiritual hygiene or awareness, is just like something that I find coming up more and more in common everyday interactions.
I think so too. Well, I think it's part of this world we're living in. I know everyone's saying that. I think we're all trying to find a way to stay grounded as the world's changed. I mean, technology, we're interacting all the time. We have to make time for ourselves and set boundaries in today's world, for sure, more than ever.
I think we're interacting, but we're not connecting.
Yes.
Right, so it's like bombardment, but then you feel like, where are the people? Where's the humanity behind it, right? And it starts with us first, and
so
then
true.
Once we're looking after ourselves, only then can we extend out.
I think we really lack connection in our world, because we really lack connection with ourselves and with our own body. We've mentioned boundaries a couple times, and that's a big topic of conversation for me, and a thing I really love to talk about. And I think a lot of us don't understand what boundaries are. It's this like nebulous, ineffable thing that we don't quite get. And it's because we're not connected with ourselves and with our bodies, and our boundaries are found within our being, within our physical body, with connecting with our physical self in the moment. We can't make boundaries or set boundaries until we understand what our own boundaries are. So we hear this set boundaries, and I think oftentimes we feel guilty for not setting a boundary because we don't know what that even means for ourselves.
That's true.
So
Yeah.
we got to connect with our bodies and ourselves before we can set boundaries, before we can connect with others. And we often try to connect outward when we're missing step one. And step one is the connection with the self. The relationship with our body is the only relationship we can't leave in this lifetime. We can't escape it in this lifetime, and we try to do everything to ignore it and not really connect there.
And to numb it out and to not listen to it
sorts
and
of
to like
things.
kind of try to talk ourselves into something else.
Anything and everything but actually connecting with ourselves.
It's funny you say that because I just went to a shaman was in town from Peru into Park City, and that was one of the first things he said, where he was talking about you need to see yourself as a body. We don't look in the mirror. We say, oh, there's Kelly, but no, it's your body, and you need to speak to it. And it was really, I mean, that one little thing really changes the way you look at yourself, because you can talk to yourself.
Absolutely.
Which is really quite amazing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's So, Kay, help us find boundaries. How do we do that?
Well, I was curious too. I mean, is this awareness something that you guys have always had? Was this your background, or was there? Can you talk a little bit about where your personal history came from that led you to this awareness?
What awareness?
The awareness of self-care and boundaries and your body connection.
Yeah. I don't remember self-care and self-love ever being a topic growing up. Like, I never even heard those words. That wasn't even a concept that was in my sphere growing up. I think it was probably in my mid-20s when it became a concept. My connection with my body I did come in with, and that was always innate for me. And I was an athlete and just hyper aware of my physical being, so that is something that I've just always had. And a lot of my work has grown from that core. I'm lucky, I feel like, to have that, because I don't think everyone comes in with well, of course we do, but life tears us out of that. I don't know. I've always been pretty solidly anchored within my physical being, I would say.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
What about your experience, Kelly?
I think probably mine has come more so, and I've always been fascinated by, sort of like being an optimist and having, I guess, how would I say that? It doesn't really pertain to self-love, I guess, but always taking care of myself has always been a theme for myself, whether it's reading books, psychology, or, getting support that way, or working out. But I think for me, where it's really kicked in is when I lost my husband in 2013, and I went from being a stay-at-home mom to a mom and a dad, and everything, my life kind of like, my rug was slipped, from underneath me, and I really was falling apart. And had to find things to, whether I was doing the same things, reading books, working out, but yoga, which is where you start to learn about mindfulness, because every day it is a challenge sometimes, and trying to find that part that feeds you, that keeps you, sane, I guess. And I think self-love and boundaries is one of those. That's where it's just become like, how do I do this? In the last 5 years, probably. But every day it's a journey, right? And trying to pick up new tools.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think life can present us with all sorts of opportunities that we will never know them until they present themselves, and then we have to face them.
Yeah.
It's interesting, I think, with social media being so ever present, there's the constant bombardment of imagery, of perfection, of people only really choosing to post the shiniest moments of their lives, and almost using the notion of being busy with pride, and there being judgment and shame attached with not having everything together. We don't, even though I think self-love is becoming more of a topic, I don't think we like to talk about the dirty underside, or the ways that we might be failing or not succeeding in that way that we associate with. So how do you what is your reaction to that?
Well, I mean, It's funny, I just went, that guy that's speaking, he's on tour across the country, Colin, he was just in Heber speaking on social media and, you know, the destruction of that, and that's a whole other podcast, right? I mean, what it's doing to teenagers and to society. I'm not a big advocate for social media. I know that it's important and we have to use it, but it's true, like even, I'm not a big social media person, but you know, I have to go on there and like, let's say I meet this new person and I'm like, now I'm looking at their social media and you're looking at, God, that girl's beautiful, and like, look at all these things. I start to feel, I feel that like envy or that jealousy, or I don't know. I feel depressed, actually. It makes me feel not like and I love my life. So I see how that, and I'm an adult, right? And I can understand that, but for kids in this world, it's a scary place because it is
it's
real.
Confusing.
Very confusing. Because you want to be happy for that person. Oh, look at all the way it presents itself with all the perfect shots, and just like, I don't know. It's very complicated. So I stay away from it if I can.
Do you really?
Yes.
Do you have kind of like social media fasting, or you just don't go on?
Yeah, fasting. Just quickly see what I need to see and get off. But like if I'm drawn, if that person pulls me in, I have to tell myself, get off there and manage that. I know it sounds, am I just being totally honest right now, or what?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's perfect. It's problematic when it's out of balance. Social media is a beautiful way of us connecting, you know, in a new way. And it can be a wonderful, healthy, beautiful thing, but it needs to be in balance, and you need to have your own boundaries. That sounds like you're really good at, where you know this is becoming an unhealthy path. I'm going into an envious state of mind when I'm looking at this other person.
Right.
And so you have your own solid boundary to say, I'm going to stop this. Yeah.
Yes.
I definitely have limitations to my, all of my electronic use. It's not just social media, but all face in electronics. I definitely need to have more of myself in nature. I need to talk to a tree more than I need to talk to a computer, right? Like, for me to be in balance.
Yeah.
I need to remind myself of the real world connection and what connection really does mean to me, and not the illusion of connection.
Yeah.
'Cause it's easy to get mixed up in the illusion.
It's designed for that, right? I mean, I think
absolutely.
Scientifically it hits off all the dopamine triggers and we get that rush and that high. And so I think for me, one of the most astounding things was to read something about, maybe it was Bill Gates or another big tech giant, limiting their children's exposure to cell phones or iPads or something, because they knew themselves that they created unhealthy expectations and things.
Yeah, and we have to help kids today with that. I mean, that's part of their self-love, right? Is that's not taking care of them. There should be, you know, some sort of rules around that. We as parents have to help that, I believe.
Well, moving back to, we were talking about just why it's important. Why do you think for women especially it's important to have a self-love, self-care routine?
I may be just an idealistic dreamer, and if I am, I'm not the only one, and it's okay. But I really feel like if women and everyone, I really feel like everyone really focus on self-love and learning boundaries first and taking care of themselves first, we can really alter the fabric of our society. We can really alter the structures and the way our whole systems work by growing from the inside out and not trying to do another way. Because I think that's the way to grow and to have healthy relationships in the world.
Well, growing up, you know, I kind of felt like the relationships around were things that I needed to learn how to manage, because I didn't learn that the centeredness comes from within, right? So it became this like battle of controlling different aspects of my life and different people in my life, and like thinking that I needed to communicate better how I wanted them to behave in order for me to feel a certain way. It's very conditional, but I think that's how our lives are really set up, and we are kind of taught, or we learn somehow, that success in your life means managing the people around you, right? And it's, I mean, it sounds so funny to say that now, but I feel like life can happen around you and the relationships are a reflection of where you are within yourself. But that didn't come to me till quite recently. And I think a lot of people are still stuck in, you know, oh, this relationship with my husband will get better if right? And it's that scary word, if, where you use that, you're like, oh, I'm trying to control someone else in order to kind of mask or improve my own experience.
Right. Yes.
You're nodding. What do you have to say, Kelly?
Oh, no, sorry. I was thinking of all these podcasts I listened to on that,
Yeah.
But no, absolutely. I mean, hey, I'll admit I have a codependent personality. I've discovered later in my life, and I always thought that meant that I'm like codependent. I'm independent, but I think I grew up in a controlling family, so I have this sense of wanting to control all these things around me, and that can be maddening. So I'm trying to learn now as an adult, this process of just letting go. I mean, we can only control ourselves, right? And I think there is peace in that because, God, then we have full control, right? But it's easier said than done. So I think we're that self-love and just that inward coming out, really taking care of us, ourselves. And I don't know, I would love to hear your steps on that, how that works.
Yeah, do you have some suggestions?
Yeah, there's definitely some necessary components to it, I feel like. Consistency is huge. You can't have any relationship that's thriving and healthy in any way unless you're consistently checking in with it. You can't expect you and your husband to be fine if you don't talk for days, weeks, months, or longer. And how often do you talk to your body? Do you actually talk to your body? Right?
Once a week.
Yeah, some people never. Some people have never even heard that
concept
at all. And why would you talk to your own body, right?
Yeah.
So consistency is a huge piece. I think with all of our self-love practices, it needs to be done in the vein of like in a heart-based way, in a loving way. We can't be guilty about we can't be taking a bath or getting a massage or doing the things we need to do and have guilt about it and think that we should be doing something else or something else is more important.
And my therapist never says, or he says never say should. It's
should.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Because it already puts you in that sad.
That shame.
And
judgment.
Yes.
So we need to train ourselves to be loving as we're loving ourselves. Because we can do the routines, we can do the yoga classes and the meditations, whatever, and our mindset could be still self-deprecating and punishing and not so kind and loving to ourselves.
Those thoughts that we have about ourselves are the foundation for everything, right? It's like how you'll allow other people to talk to you if that's how your internal dialogue is with yourself.
Right.
Yeah.
So we need to change our internal dialogue to a loving nature, to saying to ourselves that this is good and this is important work. I remind myself sometimes, like if I'm staring at the clouds or if I'm playing with my hair or like whatever I'm doing, I remind myself this is important work. This is progress for me to sit here under this tree or whatever it is that I'm doing. I have to kind of like self-massage myself, like this is okay and this is important, and retrain myself for that.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
What
I wanna
about
get
you?
under a
Do you
tree.
have some routines that you do or practices that you follow? I feel like you're very good at setting boundaries and like picking and choosing what needs your attention.
I try. It's a work in progress.
Yeah.
From a physical standpoint, I try to do yoga regularly, but and I try to have a balanced life. I do, and that's not easy because what does balance really mean? But I always tell my kids, too much is too much, too little is too little, and that applies to anything, right? Whether it's sugar, like it's okay to have sugar. Just even not having too little sugar is not okay, right? I mean, too little. So I think that finding that moderation for me is always how I try to practice and live my life. But I don't know specifically, but we all have our morning routines, right? I really try to have that morning ritual of when you wake up, and I try to avoid not rushing to the coffee machine, whatever. But those morning rituals really tee up my day for success. So that's my most important thing that I do for myself.
Do you, as you're practicing these ways of taking care of yourself, do you have like a check-in system where you need to focus more? Are there sort of bells that go off if you avoid them and you feel like you're neglecting self-care?
Oh, yes, when I'm breaking out like I am right now, this is a clear indication that I'm out of whack, you know, and need to find, yes, that's, what about for you?
We all know when we're out of whack.
Mm-hmm.
We all know our lives show us when we're more stressed, when we're overwhelmed, when we're not showing up how we want to show up in the world. The signs are obvious. You know, when you have enough self-care, you're open and receptive to the world. You're happy and joyful. You know,
You're relaxed.
You're relaxed. Yeah, exactly. And so it's not a hard thing to tell.
But it is for some people.
It requires check-in. It requires to stop and look inward and look at yourself.
For sure.
Yeah.
I think one of the things I'm discovering is that, like, we're not all in the same space of awareness. And so it's really fascinating to look at who I was 10 years ago and my relationship with anxiety, which I didn't even really think was a thing. It was just how I was. You know, I was pretty anxious, and I just didn't even know. It wasn't something that I would identify. And I look at where I am now, I'm like, oh, the check-in is important. But for some people who aren't there, you know, maybe this is the first time they hear, wait a minute, what? How do I check in, right?
Right.
So maybe, can you even talk about what that feels like for you? Like, how do you notice?
How do you notice how to check in? How do you...
Yeah, or what is checking in?
For me, it's slowing myself down and getting real with myself and looking inward and assessing all the layers. We're not separate, you know, all the layers of mental, emotional, physical.
So do you ask yourself questions, or are you feeling through the different senses?
Well, I'm proactive in a lot of things, but I feel like in this situation, I would be more reactive. So I'm listening to my body when it's speaking to me, you know, whether sometimes I get really bad migraines, or in this case, like I'm breaking out. Like when it comes to me, I stop and check in and listen and look, you know, and try to find what I'm not doing or what I need to be doing, which is typically like having more quiet time. I'm rushing around like a crazy chicken with my head cut off. But it will always show up for me, and I wish I could be proactive enough to check in before it happens, but I haven't gotten to that point.
So maybe that's like a step in the evolution.
Right.
Yeah.
Our bodies are always speaking to us.
Yes.
When they get really loud, like migraines, I just recently had a migraine. When they get really loud, I know for me that I haven't listened prior to that moment, or I neglected myself or overrode something my body was telling me prior to that moment. So as part of the evolution, we get more savvy at checking in regularly, because our body is always talking to us in every moment. And that's how boundaries work, is listening in the moment to what your body's saying.
Yeah, because sometimes I think it's too late. Like I want to be more ahead of managing this sort of stress, you know, that is not good for us. What about, I'm sorry, Renee, I know you're interviewing, but because you do a lot. I mean, you're involved in a lot of things, and every time I see you, you seem very zen. I mean, how do you manage your...
Well, it was kind of like what Melissa was talking about. I think when you know you're in a place of flow, you just kind of are deliberate about the things that you're choosing. And I've gotten to a place where I choose things that really excite me. And sitting down with amazing women and hearing your wisdom is something that I'm so passionate about. And so it takes time and it takes effort to kind of line everything up, but it feels so good. So I just focus on that.
That's right.
And then I know that what can be perceived as busyness is something that I'm really choosing to do. And I've learned kind of the art of saying no, which is so hard. I feel like as a mother and a woman and someone who wants to be fostering community and doing things that matter. But I think being gentle with ourselves and giving ourselves permission to say no and not explaining why really honors ourselves in a way that people can respect and that we first and foremost can respect. So I really do, or I really have learned how to tap into that and really follow the path of what feels good. And if it feels like scattered or busy or resistance filled or like it's not lining up, then sometimes I'll just say, okay, well, it's not meant to be right now, and that's okay. Like you were saying, both of you, you know, just being kind of gentle and forgiving. And I don't know if it's a woman thing, but I feel like we put so much pressure on ourselves, to perform and to show up as a great friend and a daughter and a mother and just excel in so many areas that I think we can be our own worst enemy by creating like sky high expectations. And for what? I mean, who are we trying to impress, right?
That's right. So it's a mindset for sure. That's a really good way to try to look, like you're choosing, these things in your day, and so to be joyful about it. It's interesting, I just heard something where being a mother, you would think is a feminine, like I feel like I'm trying to get more in my heart and be more feminine. I feel very, large and in charge these days, and I'm over it. Like where's my femininity, I want to put some braids in my hair. But someone was saying being a mother is known as being nurturing, but actually it's very masculine because it's, you're constantly making routines and setting boundaries, and it's just rah, rah, rah. It used to be where it was more nurturing, but in today's world, maybe where there's more rules or something. So as a woman and a mother, like and this is where I'm going to have to sign up for one of your courses, because I need to get into my femininity, which is what your Wild Women Tribe is about. Liberating, right, women,
and reconnecting with ourselves kind of through nature, because I think you were talking about nature being grounding, but it definitely is. Yeah. And I think, Melissa, you probably have a lot of advice on the masculine-feminine dichotomy.
Femininity isn't supported in our culture much at all right now for men or women or otherwise. Femininity is the reflective place, the slowing down, the yin states, the solitude. Solitude is another thing for me that I put on my list as absolutely essential for self-care. And so many people are afraid and never have any kind of solitude. How can you love yourself if you can't be with yourself?
I miss that.
Right?
Yeah.
I have a huge requirement for solitude.
That's good.
Is it daily or weekly or?
For me, daily.
Daily,
absolutely, yeah. I require a lot of solitude, to stay in touch with myself.
That's good to know. Yeah, I think last night I took a 2-hour bath. I lit the candles, put the music on, and it's one of those luxuries that I afford myself. Everyone's in bed, everyone's
and it's
peaceful, they don't need me anymore, and then I create that space for myself.
And that's a feminine, that helps, right? I think bring out, I need more of those. I don't do those. Thanks for the idea.
It's however it looks for you, whether it's bath time or whatever. That's the typical self-love thing, right? The bath and the candles. But it's whatever you need for you. So journaling, anything that you can do just that is reflective of yourself, that helps. One of my practices that I love, and this happened out of an injury, I write with my non-dominant hand.
Oh.
And that really puts me in a yin state. It slows me down. I have to practice patience and loving myself because the handwriting's awkward, right?
Is yin a feminine?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
I should know that, but
it's okay.
Because you hear it all the time.
Yeah.
Okay. The yin. So the yang is the
masculine, the going, the doing, the forward motion. It's electric, A to B, and feminine is magnetic. Feminine pulls towards it. It's a different force. One's not better than the other. We all need our own internal balance. Our society needs a balance, though. Our society is a lot more masculine.
It makes sense, though, because everyone's just pushing forward every day.
Go, do. And it's a particular power. It's a particular way to do things, and there's nothing wrong with it, but it is out of balance. And there's not enough room for everyone to be in a yin state, to be quiet and reflective and introspective and magnetic. Yeah.
And we are already in so much of a yang state. Is that why we seek the yin? Or
that's why we crave it. Do you guys feel in your body that deep craving? I do. A deep craving for more yin in the world.
Yeah, I do right now.
Yeah.
I feel very out of balance. I'm way on the other side. I'm yanging all day long.
And we have to retrain ourselves. Like I was saying, if I'm laying in the grass looking at the clouds, I have all this you should be doing this, and why aren't you doing this, and this phone call needs to be made, and yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
And I have to tell myself, this is okay. This is more than okay. This is healing. This is necessary. Chill, Melissa.
Yeah.
Look at the clouds.
Look at the clouds.
Yeah.
What about you? Do you feel you have a lot of femininity or like imbalance?
I think I've shifted more in recent years deliberately away from needing to control everything because I feel out of control of myself to being more accepting. So I think it starts with the intention or the noticing, and then building in more of the time to kind of sit in solitude and reflect and find that peacefulness. So I think it definitely is an evolution, but it starts with awareness. You know, it starts with being gentle and noticing and saying, hey, well, I'm yanging all over the place, and what does the counter of that look like, and what would feel good right now?
Right.
So.
Well, being here with you girls is definitely making me feel feminine and yin-y.
Yeah, good. Well, and thank you for being here. Before we go, I want to invite you to share social media handles, ways that people can get in touch with you or your businesses.
Oh,
yeah.
I'll go first, yeah. As part of my self-care, I stay off a lot of social media. And so the only way to reach me for consultations or education would be through an email, which is my name, melissa@melissahite.com.
And that's H-I-T-E.
H-I-T-E. And then I used to run a weekly sex ed group in Salt Lake called The Birds and the Bees. And so there's a residual Facebook group. If you're interested in sexually relevant material, you can find The Birds and the Bees SLC on Facebook. And it's just a fun,
I love it,
place to find that. Yeah.
I'm signing up.
Great.
And if you're looking for, we have an office building over in Prospector. We do some short-term, long-term. We do conference room rentals. You can find us on www.theprospectpc.com.
It's a co-working space.
It's a kind of co-working space, but it's become more of like a close my door and get my work done space.
But then you're also a community space as well with art.
Yes, and we
You
do
have
have an
gallery
art show,
shows.
which we have every 6 months, and we have one in October. Tomorrow.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh, yay.
Cool. Well, thank you guys both for being here and diving into the topic of self-love and the art of creating that.
Thanks for having us.
Wild Women Tribe is a transformational group that brings women together outdoors, revolving around topics and experiences like these. You can find us online at wildwomentribe.net and also Facebook and Instagram. I want to give a shout out to Park City TV for being our media sponsor of the Ignite podcast. Thank you so much for hosting us here and facilitating women's conversations. Ignite can be found on SoundCloud and YouTube and Stitcher, and there's lots of other conversations with amazing women, so you can backtrack and listen to some of those or watch some of those and pass it along. So we hope to see you next time. Thank you for turning in.